Hello, my name is Mark from jazzguitarlessons.net, and in this short video I want to in fact run through a crash course as I wrote here. So this is a screen capture lesson. I'm sitting at my kitchen table now, and this is the sort of thing I do a lot in my private lessons. I'll just go ahead, share my screen and work through the examples on staff. I've seen several questions and several bits of confusion, especially on YouTube, with regards to what is a chord inversion and what is a drop 2 voicing, what is a drop 3 voicing even. And it is my belief that people sometimes mix the nomenclature, that they mix the different names that we should give these things. So we'll sort this out. My advice to you is to watch this video in one sitting and grab staff paper so you can write the notes. So there's no guitar on this one, really no tabs, and I don't even have my instrument. We'll just be looking at the theory side of it. All right, so let's get going. First off, let's build what is known as a triad. So, and you'll hear the notes as I play. This is really fun as I input them in the software. So this is what we call a C major triad, right? A C major triad is built of the notes C, E, and G. And I'll notate it, of course. Bear with me. C major triad. There's a theory for triads, and I recommend you go to the theory part of jazzguitarlessons.net. Now, this triad does not necessarily have to be laid out this way. It could also have the C note at the bottom here be put on top. I'll even make this a little bigger. Here we go. So instead of being laid out C, E, G, we could also lay it out as being E. Sorry about that, E, G, and then C on top. Notice that this chord and this chord, they both contain the same notes, right? So we have C, E, and G. It's only the order of the notes that appear. And if you're a geek, you will also see, like me, that there's several ways you can do this. You can also place it like this. If there's 3 notes in the voicing, there's 3 ways in which you can organize it. You have C, E, G, E, G, C, and then you have G, C, E. That's all there is to it. Either of the 3 notes at the bottom can be used to be at the bottom, sorry. So either of the 3 notes of the C major. So we call this root position. Root position. And we call, when you have the third, we say 1, 3, 5, so tonic, root, third, and fifth. We call the second one, we call this a first inversion. So when the third is in the bass. And we call the last one, we call this a second inversion. And that's really the basic classical nomenclature. Now this is easy stuff because we're not even talking about C major 7. Now we're not even talking about the complicated stuff. So we will get into that. Notice that I did not address, I'm sorry, I did not address yet drop 2, drop 3 chord inversions, all these things I did not even touch on. It will come later. So let's look at a C major 7 chord now. You ready for this? So we'll do the same process with inversions. We'll do C, C, E, G, B. So, whoops, sorry about that, guys. Having a hard time with my software here. Okay, so notice that those are the notes. And this is a no-brainer. This is a C major 7 chord, and I'll even put this, sorry, C major 7. Oh, a little nice diagram too. I'll get rid of this quickly. Chords, no chord symbols, no chord diagrams. Yes, like this. So once again, this chord, since it has 4 notes, it can be inverted into 4 inversions. So this is what we call the root position. So I'll just write root. So you'll remember that root means the tonic is at the bottom. So we call C the tonic of the C major chord, of course, and then we have the first inversion with the E at the bottom. Like this. That's the first inversion. Then we'll have the second inversion, same thing. Instead of starting with the E note, we start with the G note. G, B, C, and E. So notice it looks strange, but it's really a G and then a B. Oops, sorry. A G and then a B, and then a C and an E here. Kind of all squished together, so that's your second inversion. And guess what? For chords that have a 7th, you can also have the 7th at the bottom. So you have B, C, E, G. Notice that the upper part, this is just a C major triad, and then you have a B at the bottom. All right, so far so good. So we say root, first inversion, second inversion, third inversion. In jazz, in the lingo, we will seldom say, hey, I'm playing a third inversion, because this is first inversion, second, third inversion. We don't really hear that. What we'll say is, look, I'm playing a C major 7 voicing with the fifth in the bass. G is the fifth. Oh, I'm playing a C major voicing with an E in the bass, or E as a lowest note. Now, for you guitar players, what's fun is you can play these things on your top 4 string of the guitar, and you will never say, look, I'm playing first inversion. You'll say, well, I'm playing a C major 7 voicing. The E is the lowest note I am playing, but if the bass player in the band is playing a C note, we're still playing C major 7. We're not playing any inversion. The term inversion really goes to tell you about the lowest note in the orchestra, if you want. So if you're the guitarist and you're not the bass instrument, whatever you decide to invert the chord at, you won't gain a result outside of a different texture, if you know what I mean. So you have to be careful with that, because some people would notate this. I'll give you an example. Some people would notate this chord C major 7 over E bass, because it's the E note. But since we don't know, since I'm just a guitar player alone in a room, we don't know if the bass player is actually playing an E. We shouldn't be putting the E as a slash chord. It really depends what the bass instrument is playing. So I know I'm repeating myself. That's my style of teaching, so bear with me. Now that we see those root, first inversion, second inversion, third inversion, or C at the bottom, E at the bottom, G at the bottom, B at the bottom, whatever the bass player is doing, we can start to look at drop voicings. So I will show you the 4 inversions of the drop 2 voicing by doing a copy paste of this information here. I'll copy and paste it here. Bear with me for a moment. And here we go. Okay, I'll write this here so we remember. And this will become irrelevant. So it's like drop 2. What does drop 2 mean? Well, drop 2 means that you start with the highest note, you look down 1 note, and you drop it 1 octave. So in this voicing, you look at the top note, say 1, 2. That's the second note. This note goes down 1 octave. That's drop 2. And then look here, and look here. Second note, drop it down an octave. Here, first, second, drop it down an octave. Here, first, second, drop it down an octave. Those are now what we call drop 2 voicings. The type of inversion is not preserved. That's a really important topic. This one we started from here, right? So we had the C note at the bottom. We don't have a C note at the bottom anymore. So our root position, our root inversion, became now has a G at the bottom. The one that used to have the E now has the B, and so on and so on. So you cannot identify starting from the closed to the drop 2. So here's a new terminology I have to introduce at this point in the video. I have to tell you that these voicings are inversions. They're all inversions, but they are closed voicings. That's closed voicings. Closed means that all the notes are as close together as they can be. This is, you don't jump an octave, you don't skip a note. While drop 2, and that's where the term voicing comes into play, drop 2 has this little extra bit of space in between the top note and the second note, because we dropped this one used to belong here, now it's not, right? So there's extra air inside of it, while here there's not. So notice you have closed voicing in 4 different inversions, and here you have drop 2 voicings in 4 different inversions. So there is not okay, so here's the point I'm trying to make. Sometimes on YouTube, the comments I get, people confuse drop 2 and inversion. But you can have a drop 2 that is in first inversion, with the E at the bottom, a drop 2 that is in root position, a drop 2. So the voicing really talks, this word talks about, it describes the spacing in between the notes of the voicing. It doesn't tell you anything else than the spacing in between the notes. So here we have spacing, but if you say drop 2 voicing, it gives you the spacing and not the lowest note. It doesn't give you that information unless you get it from another source. While the term inversion, this term, it does give you information as to how the chord is laid out and what's the lowest note. So I can go and tell you, hey, Bob, whatever your name is, I want to drop 2, C major, drop 2 voicing. Here it is, in root position. So the C note is at the bottom. Remember, our chord has C, E, G, and B. So you can have either of these notes at the bottom, but they're still all drop 2s. And those are all very playable on the guitar, of course. If you followed the drop 2 course by Greg Amiro, we've seen all sorts of these inversions on the top strings, on strings 2, 3, and 4, and then we started adding 9s, we started doing 2 5-1s with it, having like G7 sharp 9 and stuff, so there's tons you can do starting with drop 2 voicings, alright? So I hope it cleared things up as to what is an inversion versus what is a voicing. I have to repeat it one last time. A voicing, the name of a voicing gives you information as to the space inside, in between the notes. But if you say drop two voicing, sorry about that. If you, that's the living the life of a jazz teacher, always very busy, right? If you look at a voicing and somebody tells you I'm playing all drop 2 voicings, that person can play all of the inversion. Voicing tells you the spread; it doesn't tell you what the lowest note is. While if you say I'm playing first inversion, you know that the third of the chord will be at the bottom, but you don't have information as to what the voicing is. It can be a closed, as we call these closed because they're clustered together, and we call these drop 2 voicings because we drop the second note on the top down an octave. Now, let's do something even more fun, talk about history a little bit. Why do you think drop 2 voicings came to be? Well, first thing, they're really playable on the guitar, but that's not why they came to be in the first place. The reason voicings like this started to be played is if you look at just closed voicings and you're writing for an orchestra. So let's go back in time, beginning of the 20th century. Duke Ellington's working with an orchestra. He has the melody line on top, and then he wants to harmonize that melody with horns at the bottom. And it was not always practical to have all the notes clustered together. So say, let's have the melody here, and that second note, let's drop it down, so call it drop 2. And let's follow through the arrangement by using the same spacing in between the notes, so the same voicing in between the notes throughout the arrangement. So it gave this sound, even though the notes of the chords are always the same, it just gave that extra space. So this is a concept that's been used in classical music forever. How do you space out the notes in between the violins and the clarinets and so on, right? So there's several ways to go and have drop voicings. So drop 2 is one good one. This voicing you know on guitar for sure because it's played like this. X, 3, 5, 4, 5. X, that's a C major 7. Right? And let's look at drop 3s just for kicks because you'll see exactly where this is coming from. So it's not closed voicings anymore. Let's do drop 3 voicings. What's the process of a drop voicing? You start from the top, you look 1, 1, 2, 3, take the third note, drop it down. So this is starting to look like something you could be able to play since there's so much space. Now let's drop 1, 2, 3, this note here, 1, 2, 3, this note here. This note here, 1, 2, 3, this note here. Now, these may not look familiar, but I'll tell you one thing. This C major 7 over there, you can already play, I'm sure. It is 8, X, 9, 9, 8. So C, B, E, and G. This is a common drop 2 voicing. If you want to look at it like this on the guitar, a drop 3 voicing has a space in a note, has a space here. And so there's a string that you skip, basically. So you play on the 6th string, you skip the 5th, and etc. And for drop 2, you don't. You just have all strings, all 4 consecutive strings played. Alright, so that's it. You could also take these closed voicings, and if you want to geek a little bit with me, just as a final thought, you can do drop 4, or you could do drop 2 and 4. So I challenge you. So take this first voicing, say, and then let's bring it an octave up. It'll be more fun. Look at the notes 2 and 4. So that G note and that C note down an octave. Can you play that stuff? Certainly you can. It will be a stretch, but these are common guitar voicings, especially if you get higher up on the fretboard. So you can do the same process with all voicings. Say, can you do drop 3, Can you do drop 2 and 3, drop 3 and 4? And if you're a fan of this stuff, which I always call this chord porn with my students, I recommend looking at Mick Goodrick. Mick Goodrick, the advancing guitarist, of course, and you can also look at Mick Goodrick, the encyclopedia, the almanac of voice leading. So it's just this yellow pages of chords, or white pages, should I say, of chords, and it shows you all the voicings. It's a really cool book, and there's other books by Mick Goodrick which will tell you a lot about how to use inversions. And of course, when you have these inversions, you can voice lead from one chord to another, saying, if you're in a certain drop 2 and this is your C major 7 chord and you're going to a G7 after that, how can you keep notes close by when you're going to the next chord, right? There's so much to be done. So anyways, that was a theory crash course. Thank you for being part of this. Of course, feel free to ask questions at the bottom of this video or send me an email. It's always a pleasure to hear back from you guys. And meanwhile, I'll let you go. I'm Mark from jazzguitarlessons.net. Improve your jazz guitar playing with a real teacher. And I'll talk to you soon. Take care.